I was fixing the damn coffee grinder at 3 in the morning when I heard Candace's BMW purr into our driveway. Funny thing about insomnia, it gives you time to think, time to notice things. Like how my wife of 15 years had been coming home later and later from her team building retreats with her boss. The kitchen light cast long shadows across our Victorian home's hardwood floors as I tinkered with the grinder's motor. Candace always complained about this old house, called it quaint in that tone that really meant embarrassing. She preferred sleek, modern things, luxury models, you might say. I heard her heels click across the front porch, heard her fumble with her keys. When she finally pushed through the door, I was sitting at the kitchen table with 2 mugs of coffee and her passport in my hand. Lose something? I asked, not looking up from the little blue book. Candace froze in the doorway, her designer dress wrinkled, her usually perfect blonde hair disheveled. Jack, don't be childish. I'm not being childish, Candy. I'm just starting my upgrade. She tried to play it cool, walking to the counter like nothing was wrong. But I could see her hands shaking as she reached for the coffee. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because I found this interesting video on your phone. I held up her iPhone, the one she'd left charging on the nightstand. From Victor's office party last week? Want to watch it together? The color drained from her face. She knew exactly which video I meant. I pressed play and Victor Paxton's arrogant voice filled our kitchen. She's married to some blue-collar contractor. Nice enough guy, I guess, but he's just a starter kit husband. I'm the luxury model. The laughter from her coworkers on the recording was like glass breaking. But what really got to me was Candace's voice, clear as day. God, Victor, you're terrible, but you're not wrong. I set the phone down gently. Starter kit, huh? Jack, I can explain. No need. I get it. 15 years, and I'm just the practice round. The foundation you built your life on before trading up. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the pre-dawn darkness. Thing is, Candy, I've been doing some upgrading of my own. My phone rang. Perfect timing. That's my accountant, I said, answering on speaker. Hey, Bill. Yeah, do it. Liquidate the whole portfolio, all 38 million, and put the villa on the market immediately. Candace's coffee mug slipped from her hands, shattering on the kitchen tiles. The villa? She whispered. Jack, that's my dream home. You can't. My name's on the deed, sweetheart. My money bought it. My decision. I hung up and smiled at her for the first time in months. Consider it the first step in your downgrade. The next morning, I was in my basement workshop by 6 a.m., building something special. The Victorian's basement was my sanctuary, cluttered with tools, half-finished projects, and the smell of sawdust and motor oil. Candace never came down here, too blue-collar for her tastes. My phone buzzed with increasingly frantic texts from her. She'd tried to use her credit cards at the Ritz downtown where she'd been staying since our little chat. All declined. Her bank accounts? Frozen pending the divorce filing I'd submitted at 8 a.m. sharp. Jack, you bastard! The basement door slammed open and Candace stumbled down the stairs in yesterday's dress. You can't just cut me off. Actually, I can. Funny thing about being married to a contractor. You learn a lot about contracts. Prenups, for instance. I didn't look up from the circuit board I was soldering. Remember that romantic weekend in Vegas? When we renewed our vows and signed those papers you said were just for fun? Her face went white. She'd been too drunk on champagne and Victor's promises to read the fine print. That's not legal? My lawyer says otherwise. Adultery voids the community property clause. You get to keep what you brought into the marriage. I finally looked at her, which, if I recall correctly, was about $12,000 in student loan debt and a Honda Civic with a blown transmission. She tried a different approach, moving closer, putting on that sultry voice that used to work on me. Jack, baby, we can work this out. It was just a fling. Victor doesn't mean anything. Funny. That's exactly what he said about you. The workshop went dead quiet except for the hum of my soldering iron. What? I reached into my toolbox and pulled out a small recording device. Had a drink with Victor yesterday afternoon. Told him I knew about you two, that I was ready to step aside like a gentleman. You know what he said? I pressed play. Victor's voice, slightly slurred from the 3 martinis I'd bought him. Look, Jack, I appreciate you being cool about this. But honestly, Candace is just a midlife crisis thing. Great in bed, sure, but she's not wife material. Not for someone in my position. Too needy, too desperate to impress. I'll probably end it after the merger goes through. Candace sat down hard on my workbench, knocking over a jar of screws. They scattered across the concrete floor like her world falling apart. He said that? He said a lot more. About your little habits, your insecurities, the way you laugh too loud at his jokes. I turned back to my project. Turns out, you're not his luxury model either, Candy. You're just another starter kit for him, too. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Part of me, the part that had loved her for 15 years, wanted to comfort her. But then I remembered that video, that laughter, those words. So, here's how this works, I continued, my voice steady and calm. You can stay at the Ritz until your credit runs out, probably tomorrow. Then you can figure out where starter kits go when they're returned to the store. Jack, please, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. No, Candy. You made a choice. Now I'm making mine. My phone rang. Gabe Morrison, my old drinking buddy, and the best security contractor in the city. Hey, Gabe. Yeah, I need those cameras installed today. Every room, every angle, and make sure the remote access works perfectly. Candace looked confused. Cameras? What cameras? I smiled. The ones going into the villa. My villa. The one where you and Victor have been having your little luxury model test drives. 3 days later, I was sitting in my truck outside the villa, watching through my tablet as Candace and Victor prepared for their big party. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were celebrating the merger that would make Victor CEO of the biggest development company in New England, using my house and my money to impress his board of directors. The villa was everything Candace had dreamed of. Glass and steel, perched on a hillside overlooking the city. Infinity pool, wine cellar, the works. I'd bought it for her second anniversary gift, back when I thought our marriage meant something. Through the security cameras I'd had Gabe install, I watched Victor swagger around in his $1,000 suit, playing host. Candace looked stunning in a black cocktail dress, playing the perfect corporate wife to a man who wasn't her husband. You see this shit? Gabe's voice crackled through my radio. He was positioned on the ridge above the house, monitoring the backup systems. I see it. You ready with the sprinkler override? Ready when you are, boss. I waited until Victor raised his champagne glass. The entire party gathered around him on the main terrace. Through the camera feed, I could hear his voice clearly. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to toast someone special tonight. Candace Ellery has been instrumental in making this merger happen. She's shown me what it means to upgrade every aspect of your life, personal and professional. The crowd laughed and applauded. Candace beamed, probably thinking this was her moment, her public declaration. Victor continued, to Candace, for helping me realize that sometimes you have to trade in your starter model for the luxury version. More laughter, more applause. Candace kissed him right there in front of everyone. Now, I said into the radio. The fire suppression system activated with a shriek of alarms. Every sprinkler in the house erupted simultaneously, dousing the party in thousands of gallons of water. The sound system shorted out with a spectacular shower of sparks. The lights flickered and died. Through my tablet, I watched chaos unfold. Board members in designer suits scrambling for cover. Candace's perfect hair plastered to her skull. Victor slipping on the wet marble, landing hard on his expensive ass. Luxury model, huh? I said to myself, watching Victor flail around in his soaked tuxedo. Hope you like a wet finish. My phone buzzed. Text from Candace. I know this was you. I texted back, prove it. Oh wait, you can't afford a lawyer. 20 minutes later, I watched through the cameras as the last guest fled. Victor was screaming at someone on his phone, probably the security company. Candace stood alone on the terrace, drenched and shivering. She looked directly into one of the cameras, as if she knew I was watching. This isn't over, Jack, she mouthed. I turned off the tablet and drove home. Tomorrow, things would get really interesting. The Riverside Country Club's annual charity auction was the social event of the season. Old money, new money, and everyone trying to climb the ladder gathered to see and be seen. I'd never been much for these things, but Candace had dragged me to enough of them over the years that I knew the players. I also knew that Victor and Candace would be there, trying to salvage their reputations after the villa incident. Word travels fast in a small city, and the story of the mysterious sprinkler malfunction had already made the rounds. I wore my best suit, not designer, but clean and well-fitted. I'd learned long ago that confidence was the best accessory. They were holding court near the silent auction tables when I walked in. Victor had his arm around Candace's waist, both of them smiling too brightly at the cluster of board members and their wives. Jack! Tanya Morrison, Candace's work friend, spotted me first. What a surprise to see you here. The group turned to look at me. Candace went pale, but Victor just smiled that predatory grin of his. Jack Ellery, Victor said, extending his hand. Good to see you, buddy. How's the construction business? I shook his hand, matching his grip. Can't complain. Though I hear the luxury development markets has been having some water damage issues lately. A few people chuckled. Victor's smile tightened. Yeah, we had a little technical difficulty at the villa the other night, he said. But that's what insurance is for, right? Absolutely. Though I hear insurance doesn't cover everything. Like reputation damage? The conversation around us had stopped. Other guests were starting to notice the tension. Candace stepped forward, trying to play peacemaker. Jack, maybe we could talk privately. Why? I thought we were all friends here. Victor certainly seems to think so. I looked directly at him. In fact, I heard you've been giving marriage advice. Something about starter kits and luxury models. Victor's face flushed red. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because I have it on good authority that you're quite the expert on the subject, especially when it comes to other men's wives. The crowd was definitely listening now. Nothing like a little public drama to spice up a charity auction. Jack, that's enough, Candace hissed. Is it? Because I'm just getting started on my upgrade program. I pulled out my phone. Would you like to hear Victor's thoughts on luxury models? I have a recording. Victor snapped. He lunged forward, grabbing for my phone, but I stepped aside. His momentum carried him straight into the champagne tower behind me. Crystal glasses exploded in a cascade of Dom Perignon and broken glass. The crowd gasped. Victor lay sprawled in the wreckage, his designer tuxedo soaked and cut by glass shards. Oh my, I said, offering him my hand. How clumsy of me. I hope that wasn't a luxury model tuxedo. He slapped my hand away, struggling to his feet. You son of a bitch. Victor! One of the board members stepped forward. What the hell is going on here? Before Victor could answer, Tanya Morrison, who'd been listening to every word, spoke up. Did he really say that about starter kits? Because that's exactly what happened to my cousin Sarah when she was dating that banker from Boston. Another woman nodded. I heard he's been through half the secretaries at the company. And that settlement with his last assistant. Ladies, please. Victor tried to interrupt, but the damage was done. The gossip mill was spinning up to full speed. I looked at Candace, who was staring at Victor like she'd never seen him before. Looks like your luxury model has a few recalls, Candy. Might want to check the warranty. I walked away, leaving them standing in the wreckage. Behind me, I could hear the whispers starting, the phones coming out to capture photos of Victor's humiliation. Phase 2 complete. Victor made his move 3 nights later. I was working late at the construction site, where my crew was putting up a new apartment complex downtown. The building was about 60% complete. Concrete floors, steel framework, but no walls or windows yet. Just a skeleton reaching toward the sky. I heard the footsteps on the 3rd floor around midnight. Soft, trying to be quiet, but I'd been expecting this. Men like Victor don't handle public humiliation well, especially when their business deals start falling apart because of damaged reputations. I'd heard through Dana, my sister who worked in HR at a competing firm, that 2 board members had already pulled out of the merger. Something about character concerns and liability issues. The footsteps were getting closer. I was in the foreman's trailer, reviewing blueprints by lamplight, but I had a clear view of the construction site through the window. Jack Ellery! Victor's voice echoed through the empty building. He was drunk, angry, and probably armed with something. Men like him always thought violence was the answer when their world started crumbling. I stepped outside the trailer. Evening, Victor. Little late for a site inspection, don't you think? He emerged from the shadows on the 2nd floor, looking down at me. His expensive clothes were dirty, his hair disheveled. In his hand was a crowbar he'd probably grabbed from one of my tool stations. You think you're so fucking smart, he called down, destroying everything I've worked for. I didn't destroy anything, Victor. I just turned on the lights so people could see what was already there. He started down the concrete stairs, the crowbar dragging behind him. You know what your problem is, Jack? You never knew when to quit. Should have just taken your divorce settlement and walked away. Funny thing about that, I said, backing toward the construction site. I did some more digging into your business practices. Amazing what you can find in public records when you know where to look. I pulled out a manila folder from my jacket. Insider trading, Victor. 3 separate instances over the past 2 years. Small enough to avoid SEC attention, but big enough to make you a very wealthy man. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs. You can't prove anything. Maybe not in court, but I don't need a conviction to destroy you. Just suspicion. Just enough doubt to make your board nervous. I opened the folder. Like this email you sent to your broker 20 minutes before the Hartwell acquisition was announced publicly. Or this stock purchase right before the Riverside development got city approval. Give me that. He raised the crowbar and started toward me. I backed into the construction site, leading him deeper into the maze of concrete pillars and steel beams. The ground was muddy from yesterday's rain, and there were puddles of standing water everywhere. You know what the beauty of construction is, Victor? It's all about foundations. You build on solid ground, or everything comes crashing down. He swung the crowbar at my head. I ducked, and the metal bar rang against a steel beam. The thing is, I continued, dodging another swing, your foundation was always shit. Built on lies, cheating, stepping on other people. That's not luxury, Victor. That's just cheap. He lunged again, but his expensive leather shoes had no traction on the muddy ground. He slipped, stumbling forward, and I stepped aside. He crashed face first into a pile of wet concrete that my crew had mixed for tomorrow's pour. The crowbar flew from his hands, clattering across the concrete floor. Victor tried to push himself up, but the wet cement was like quicksand. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. Careful there, luxury model, I said, standing over him. That concrete's still setting, just like your reputation. He was covered in gray sludge from head to toe, his designer clothes ruined. One of his Italian leather shoes had come off completely, lost somewhere in the muck. You're insane, he gasped, spitting concrete from his mouth. No, Victor. I'm just a starter kit with an upgrade plan. I reached down and picked up his phone, which had fallen during his tumble. Without hesitation, I dropped it into the wet concrete, where it disappeared with a wet plop. Oops! Hope you had insurance on that. Victor finally managed to pull himself free, but he looked like a creature from a horror movie. Gray, dripping, and missing a shoe. This isn't over, he snarled. Actually, it is, because tomorrow morning, copies of these documents go to every member of your board, every business reporter in the city, and the SEC. I held up the folder, now safely out of his reach. Game over, Victor. Time to return your luxury model status to the dealer. He limped away into the darkness, leaving a trail of concrete footprints and his dignity behind. I called Mason, my foreman. Hey, it's Jack. We're going to need fresh concrete for the 3rd floor foundation. The batch we mixed tonight got contaminated. 2 weeks later, Candace's parents showed up at my door. Richard and Patricia Whitmore. Old New England money. The kind of people who thought their shit didn't stink because their great-grandfather had owned a textile mill. Jack, we need to talk, Richard said, pushing past me into the house without being invited. Patricia followed, her nose wrinkled in distaste at my quaint Victorian decor. This situation with Candace has gone far enough. You're embarrassing the family. I led them to the living room, where they perched on my furniture like it might give them a disease. Coffee? I offered. We're not here for social pleasantries, Richard snapped. We're here to discuss terms. What kind of terms? Patricia opened her purse and pulled out a checkbook. How much will it take for you to stop this vendetta against Victor Paxton and allow Candace to divorce you quietly? I almost laughed. You want to buy me off? We're prepared to offer you $500,000, Richard said. More than enough for someone in your situation. My situation? Don't be coy, Jack. You're a tradesman. This is more money than you'll see in a lifetime. I sat back in my chair, studying these 2 relics of American aristocracy. You know what's funny? Your daughter thought the same thing, that I was just some blue-collar guy who'd be grateful for whatever scraps fell from the table. Candace made a mistake, Patricia said. But she's young. She was confused. She's 42 years old, and she wasn't confused when she was laughing about me being a starter kit husband. Richard leaned forward. Victor Paxton is a good match for her. He can provide the kind of life she deserves. Really, because last I heard, Victor's company stock had dropped 40% since those SEC documents leaked. Something about a federal investigation into insider trading. Both parents went quiet. They hadn't heard about that yet. Oh, and there's more, Ashna continued. Turns out, Victor's been running a little side business, selling advance information about development projects to competing firms. The FBI raided his office yesterday. Patricia's hand went to her throat. That's not possible. Very possible. In fact, I have it on good authority that he's going to be arrested within the week. I stood up. So, your daughter's luxury model is about to become an orange jumpsuit model. Richard stood too, his face red with anger. You did this. You destroyed him. I didn't destroy anything. I just helped the truth come to light. Victor destroyed himself with greed and arrogance. What do you want? Patricia asked quietly. I want justice. I want everyone to see what kind of people you really are, what kind of person your daughter really is. I walked to the window, looked out at the street. But most of all, I want to finish my upgrade. What does that mean? I turned back to them with a smile. It means you should call Candace. Tell her to meet me at the villa tonight, 8 o'clock. Time for the final demonstration. After they left, I called Gabe. You ready for the grand finale? Born ready, boss. All systems are go. Then I called Dana. Did you get the recording equipment set up? Everything's wired for sound, big brother. This is going to be beautiful. Finally, I called Mason. Bring the truck around back of the villa at 8:30. We're going to need the spotlight rig. It was time to show Candace and Victor what a real upgrade looked like. The villa looked perfect in the twilight, all glass and steel gleaming against the darkening sky. I'd had the power restored after the sprinkler incident, and every light in the house was blazing. It looked like a luxury showroom, which was exactly what I wanted. Candace arrived first, pulling up in a rental car. Her BMW had been repossessed 3 days ago when she couldn't make the payments. She looked tired, older somehow, wearing a simple dress instead of her usual designer outfits. Victor showed up 10 minutes later in a beat-up Honda. His Porsche had been seized by the FBI as part of their investigation. He looked even worse than Candace, unshaven, nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder. I watched them through the security cameras as they approached the front door. They were arguing already, probably about whose fault this whole mess was. The door was unlocked. They stepped inside, calling my name. Jack, we're here. Let's get this over with. I was waiting for them in the main living room, sitting in the leather chair that faced the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. On the coffee table in front of me were 3 manila folders. Glad you could make it, I said. Please, sit down. We have a lot to discuss. They sat together on the couch across from me, but I could see the tension between them. The stress of the past few weeks had taken its toll on their relationship. What do you want, Jack? Candace asked. My parents said you were ready to negotiate. I am, but first, I want to show you something. I picked up a remote control and turned on the massive wall-mounted TV behind them. The screen filled with security footage from the villa, Candace and Victor in various compromising positions over the past 6 months. Their faces went white as they recognized themselves. You've been recording us? Victor sputtered. It's my house. I can record whatever I want. I turned off the TV. But that's just for my personal collection. What I really want to show you is this. I opened the first folder. Candace, did you know that Victor has been embezzling money from his company to pay for your little getaways? The villa rental fees, the jewelry, those weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard, all paid for with stolen money. She turned to look at Victor, who was sweating now. Victor, is that true? It's not stealing if you're going to pay it back. And Victor, I continued opening the second folder. Did you know that Candace has been selling inside information about your company's development projects to your competitors? Every pillow talk conversation you two had, she was recording and selling to the highest bidder. Now, it was Victor's turn to stare. What? Candace's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's not... I never... Oh, but you did. I pulled out a stack of bank statements. 12 separate payments over the past 4 months. Very clever. Using an offshore account. Almost clever enough. They were both staring at each other now with horror and betrayal. The perfect couple, realizing they'd been using each other all along. But here's the really beautiful part, I said, opening the third folder. You've both been so busy screwing each other over that you never noticed what I was doing. I pulled out a deed. Victor, remember when you convinced Candace to sign over her half of the villa to you? So you could protect it from my divorce lawyers? He nodded slowly. And Candace, remember when you forged Victor's signature on that quitclaim deed, thinking you could hide the property from both of us? Her face went pale. Well, it turns out that when you commit fraud on a property deed, the entire transaction becomes void, which means, I smiled, the villa reverts to its original owner, me. I pressed a button on the remote. Suddenly, steel shutters slammed down over all the windows. The front door locked with an electronic click. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the room in red. What's happening? Candace screamed. Security lockdown, I said calmly. Don't worry, it's temporary. Just long enough for my friends outside to set up their equipment. Through the intercom system, I could hear Mason's voice. Spotlights in position, boss. Perfect. Gabe, are you ready with the sound system? All set. Every radio and PA system in a 5-mile radius is patched in. Victor was pulling frantically at the door handle. You can't keep us here? This is kidnapping. Actually, it's not. You're free to leave anytime you want. The balcony doors are unlocked. They ran to the sliding doors that led to the main balcony. I followed them outside, where Mason had set up a massive construction spotlight that illuminated us like actors on a stage. Below us, I could see cars stopping, people getting out to look up at the spectacle. Word travels fast in a small city, and half the town had probably heard about this showdown by now. Ladies and gentlemen, my voice boomed from speakers all across the valley. Welcome to the final demonstration of luxury versus starter kit quality. Candace grabbed my arm. Jack, please stop this. Oh, but we're just getting to the good part. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Victor's voice filled the night air. She's married to some blue-collar contractor. He's just a starter kit husband. I'm the luxury model. The crowd below us was growing larger. I could see people with phones recording everything. Now let's hear from the luxury model himself, I continued. Victor, tell everyone about your business practices. I'm not saying anything. That's okay, I have recordings. Another button press, and Victor's drunken confession from our bar conversation echoed across the valley. Look, Jack, I appreciate you being cool about this. But honestly, Candace is just a midlife crisis thing. Great in bed, sure, but she's not wife material. Candace slapped Victor across the face. You bastard. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the pièce de résistance. I held up a final document. A full confession from Candace Ellery, detailing how she's been selling corporate secrets to fund her lifestyle. Signed and notarized this morning. I never signed that, she screamed. Actually, you did. Remember that settlement meeting with my lawyer yesterday? You thought you were signing a confidentiality agreement? I smiled. Always read the fine print, Candy. The crowd below was cheering now, enjoying the show. I could see news vans arriving, reporters setting up cameras. Victor made a desperate lunge for the confession, but I stepped aside. He crashed into the balcony railing, which gave way under his weight. For a moment, he teetered on the edge, 3 stories above the crowd. Candace grabbed his arm, pulling him back to safety. Victor! How touching, I said. The luxury model and the starter kit, together at last. Police sirens were wailing in the distance. Someone had probably called about the noise. Here's how this ends, I announced, both to them and to the crowd below. Victor Paxton will be arrested for embezzlement and insider trading. Candace Ellery will be charged with corporate espionage and fraud. And me? I'm going home to my quaint little Victorian house, where I'll sleep like a baby for the first time in months. The steel shutters on the windows suddenly retracted. The front door unlocked with a click. You're free to go, I said, but I wouldn't recommend the front door. There's quite a crowd waiting for you. As if on cue, the police arrived, their flashing lights adding to the spectacle. Detective Morrison, Gabe's cousin, led the team up to the balcony. Jack Ellery, we have warrants for Victor Paxton and Candace Ellery. Are they here? Right behind you, detective. Victor tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The balcony was 30 feet above the ground, and the crowd below was watching every move. Candace just stood there as they put the handcuffs on, staring at me with a mixture of hatred and something that might have been respect. You planned all of this, she said quietly. From the very beginning. From the moment I heard that recording, yes. You wanted to trade up, Candy? Well, congratulations. You've been upgraded to federal prison. As they led her away, she called back over her shoulder. This isn't over, Jack. Actually, I said, it is. I watched from the balcony as they were loaded into separate police cars. The crowd was dispersing now, the show over. In a few hours, this would all be on the morning news. By tomorrow, everyone in the city would know the whole story. I turned off the spotlight and walked back into the villa. My villa. I'd put it on the market tomorrow, use the money to expand my construction business. Maybe buy that new equipment I'd been wanting. My phone buzzed with a text from Dana. Saw it on the news. You magnificent bastard. Another text from Mason. Boss, that was fucking beautiful. Drinks are on me tomorrow. And one from Gabe. Remind me never to piss you off. I walked through the empty villa one last time, turning off lights, making sure everything was secure. In the morning, I'd have the locks changed again, and the security system reset. But tonight, I was going home to my quaint Victorian house, where I'd pour myself a whiskey and fix that damn coffee grinder once and for all. Some upgrades, I realized, aren't about getting something newer or more expensive. Sometimes they're about getting rid of the things that were holding you back in the first place. As I drove away from the villa, I could see the city lights spread out below me like stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new possibilities. But tonight, for the first time in years, I was exactly where I belonged. The starter kit had become the luxury model after all.